Hi, everybody. It's Caitlin, and I interviewed my late father's bestest friend, Michael Thomas, but better known to me as my Uncle Mike. And he's probably one of the most inspirational, influential, and kind-hearted people I've ever met, and an absolutely great storyteller and spokesperson. And a little bit about my Uncle Mike is that he is the father to three absolutely brilliant children, each raised in a different way than he was, and they all have absolutely flourished in their adulthood and careers just as he has. And he was born and raised in Marietta, Georgia, and is so heavily involved in outreach and educating others over the history of African Americans in Marietta at the Marietta Museum of History. And he had a very unique experience growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, compared to others of his race. And you're really going to be able to see that throughout his videos and see how the way he was raised, the way he presented himself, the way he was treated all impacted the person who he is today. And I truly believe what he discussed in an interview, it should be brought more in conversation. And that's why I'm glad to be able to share his story today. And the first clip's going to be about how important and how large of a role the church in his community had on his entire community, and how it was really the center of his lives and basically all the lives that lived within his area, and how being religious in the South is a culture within itself. And all right, here's the clip.
Another big piece of the community we moved to Marietta was the church. Cold Street Baptist Church. It was a small church, but my parents were very active in it. In the church, we had other kids that were like us. We had talent shows. I was an usher, which that time was big time. You had to learn how to when to open the doors.
Yeah, I was an usher.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I had to, we had to, of course, we didn't have a choice. We went to church every Sunday, and sometimes we went like in the middle of the week. But that was focused, that a lot of what we did was church really helped the community, because that's where people communicated, and you stayed close to your roots in how you saw people that were successful in other areas.
The church you went to was predominantly Black?
It was all yeah. It was a small Baptist church. As a matter of fact, the pastor of the church was friends with Dr. King.
Oh, really?
And so, yeah, and so Dr. King's father came to our church once. Also, my grandparents lived in Atlanta before they moved to Marietta. And when they lived in Atlanta, they lived in the same community that the King family moved. So they were neighbors with Daddy King and all. So there was a sense of, in that church, of pride, and you saw successful Black people, although professional was then, they had good jobs, but you just saw it. So it was a different, you felt proud of what you were doing during that time. It was just something that we did, and we had many friends from that, but it was what held us, the core together, was being a part of church.
How old were you when you were at that church?
Well, we started when I was probably 4 or 5. I don't remember when I was 3 or 4, but we went there. But I remember going when I do remember when I was in Smyrna, because we used to drive to Marietta, go to church, have a church meeting. And the big thing was we take 41 by the Big Chicken, and then there was a McDonald's, and Mom and Dad would always buy us a milkshake and French fries when we headed back to Smyrna. I remember that. I vaguely remember that. So church was very important.
All right, so I actually use a textual analysis from our class PowerPoint that says culture is the mean to cultivate, generally referring to the patterns of human activity and the symbolic structures that give such activity significance. Culture isn't deemed significant unless you give something to it. And as much as the community gave to the church gave right back to the community. And Michael Mike really delves into the importance of the church on the community and how it was the center of each individual person's lives. And the community and the culture of being religious in the South really kind of intertwine with one another. And a sense of community and culture is associated within the relationship between him and the church back onto its people. And being a part of something that a race can share was also deemed very important to the community, and what made it a really tight-knit group of individuals that lived together. And the next clip I decided to share is about growing up in the South as African American. And he really discusses how growing up Black in Georgia for him was a different experience than others that were also Black in that time period, based upon the way that his parents chose to raise him and his siblings, based upon what was deemed normal for a Black parent to teach their Black kid and a Caucasian to teach their white kid. And he really kind of talks about how important tradition is involving parenting. Right?
We would, drive to Florida, eat in the car, we'd stop at a rest stop, and that was fun. We went to like St. Petersburg or Orlando, and but when I look at that, I did not realize that if you understand, for instance, the Green Book.
Yeah.
Right. The Green Book movie is really based off of the actual Green Book, which was a book that was created in Chicago and New York to tell Black people where it was safe to go and stay and travel. And so what I realized was it was fun to us, but there was a reason why we got up early and was driving the back roads of Georgia down to Florida. Mm-hmm. My parents never said anything. And
did they ever end up telling you, or did you just figure that out?
They never told us. And I could imagine the stress of my father driving through areas, right? But we never saw any of it. Staying in hotels. There's a film clip of me that I recently processed for the family where you see me running in the ocean or in a swimming pool. But also during that time, there were other hotels that would not allow Black people in their pools. They would close the pools. But here we were in Florida, in pools, swimming around and everything. So our whole world was like, we didn't know all these things that were going on. My parents knew.
Do you think that was a good thing that they didn't tell you? Or do you wish that they kind of did? I mean, I guess you figured it out.
I'm torn.
Yeah.
I'm torn because I think if they had told me, I may have been a different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad they didn't. They chose to. And that was a good decision because they never told us to be fearful or anything.
It was kind of not sheltering you in a way. It was sheltering you in a way of like.
It was.
I don't know. That is very typical decision to think about it.
Even then, but even my grandparents. Okay, so like my grandparents, right? Oh my gosh, what they probably lived through.
Yeah.
Because what they lived through, but they never talked negatively about it around us. And so I think in that way, it hurt a lot of people like me because we weren't focused on our history. We were more focused on just blending in and better. And so I don't blame it at all. I look back and think, well, gosh, I'm glad I didn't know my mom and dad were petrified when I went to a Leonard Skinner concert in my junior year, and I'm in the concert, probably one of three Blacks in the Leonard Skinner concert, and the Confederate flags and all that. But I never felt anything. So I think in a way that's good for me because I learned more afterwards, as opposed if I learned then, I may have been a little bit more apprehensive.
All right. So he really talks about how his parents really played a role on the person he is today, and him being Black and seeing how certain things his parents chose not to reveal really points out to the ideal within parenting of growing up in the South. And his upbringing and the way that he was taught to view life allowed him to excel in areas that his race should have potentially hindered him from succeeding in. And through parents' own past experiences, there's a tradition within the style of parenting reflected. This is shown as when parents choose what parts of their past that they had to undergo that they wish not to bestow upon their children. So they'll either keep things for them or share things for them. And that kind of just plays a role in tradition involving what goes down from generation to generation and what parents choose to share and not to share. And then the next clip is about the importance of oral preservation and oral communication of written stories and oral stories. And all right.
It was full, like last night, with all dancing with all the kids, and they're like laughing. Everybody's laughing. Like, look at the Thomas family. They're all out there dancing. And it's like we were like our own special, you know how you guys, we all a special group. And that makes me feel good because I know I'm a good person, I'm a good neighbor, care about people, but I'm an introvert. My wife calls me a closet introvert because I'm very social out in the community, in the neighborhood, and it's not fake. I never go anywhere fake. It's just I turn it on, but I don't want to engage. Like sometimes I might wait till the neighbors go across because I don't really want to
Oh yeah.
engage. So that's my downtime. And I learned out from reading the book Quiet that there are people that are introverts and extroverts, but part of it, one feeds the other. So I like my downtime that replenishes me, right? You fill up your pitcher. That's how I am. So other than that, you've known me since you were knee high. I'm always crazy Uncle Michael, laughing, joking. I care. I do what I say I'm going to do. I love, I care. And just to do this interview for you I was thrilled. I was thrilled. I really was.
I was as well.
I was thrilled.
It's crazy to think about how, like, when you talked about the beginning about how you really didn't see like a lot of like the racism stuff going on, and now like a lot of your life is just teaching people about it.
It is. It is, and I'll tell you this, Caitlin. It's sad that you're watching history repeat itself. When you look at politics now and all, it's not new. It's just revealed. One of the things that happens when you do read a lot about history and you know what happens, it's like you know too much. It's like the scene in the Green Mile.
Oh my gosh, I was about to say I just watched Green Mile and evils in the world. It's too much sometimes.
It's like what he said, but shards of glass. Because when you know where it comes from and you know how it repeats, and you want to scream, and you know too much, and sometimes like, why do you keep reading it, Michael?
But why do you keep absorbing this information? It's just
because it is not new. It's not shocking to me. It's not. As our driver, it's not. It's sad, but that's how humans are, right? Race is like made up construct. There are no races. The Gnome study, all of us are 99.9%
Homo sapiens. The same.
Right.
Humans.
The race was only to separate and to subjugate, right? But am I bitter? No, I'm not. I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. Although it hurts the stuff that I know, but I like to tell people about it. And so you're right. The Green Mile, that one scene when John Coffey is like, balls is like shards of glass all the time.
I just watched that movie.
Yeah,
and that movie, like that was my. I cried 17 times that movie. That was the most I've ever cried in a movie. And like I think about that because I'm like, wow, pain that he actually feels it.
Exactly.
And he just keeps taking it in.
Exactly. And that's how I feel sometimes.
And it's exhausting.
It is. And sometimes I have to be careful when I'm talking with the kids because I don't want to always be that doom and gloom. I want them to know history, but I can't. You have to be careful how you have to be careful sometimes. Your passion sometimes can roll over to people to make them uncomfortable. And I'm not trying to make them uncomfortable. I'm just trying to make them understand where we are today and why it hasn't changed. It's just that the veil is off and it's different.
History hurts, and it's like you want at the same time you gotta share it because you don't want people to forget about it
and understand.
A lot of people in my generation don't know anything from the past.
All right, so another quote I use from the worldview on PowerPoint is involving the realization of worldview and how the experiences and ideals of others truly impact the overall conceptualization of the human condition. Written stories allows communities to connect through shared experiences from the past. And without people sharing and writing these stories, nobody would be able to know about history. Some pain that people experience may have never ever been known. And the past cannot be rewritten, but the future can be an entirely different story on its own, and it's up to those stories about written or oral to be shared. And overall, concluding my presentation, I'm really glad that I got to talk to my Uncle Mike because it's really good to be able to communicate with someone who was really close to my father, and that since I cannot even come close to fathoming in comparison my own life to his struggles, this interview helped me to learn and appreciate the struggles, history, and community that shared and non-individuals can discuss together. And I hope you guys all enjoyed, and thank you for listening.